You're watching a TGM production. Hello and welcome back to Tom Mason The Interviews. Yes, we're back with a series that is a direct title rip from Parkinson, but I'm not well known enough just to be known by my last name, because if you call me by my last name, it's also a first name. And we're back with another interview, our second of 2026, and the last time I'll reference how many of 2026 because I'll probably forget the number. But we shall crack on. My guest today is best known for being BAFTA nominated. Is the one and only Ashley Catherine Duke.
Thank you. Hello. How's it going?
So we shall start at the very beginning, because Julie Andrews once said it was a good place to start, and so far she's not been wrong. How did you get into the industry we call media?
Ooh, it was a long journey. I always knew that this is what I wanted to do. So left school and went to college at 16, studied media, then went to university. But after uni, I had the skills and I
Hmm.
had the drive, but it's very difficult to get in. So honestly, I worked in a cinema for about 7 years and I did as many media related opportunities as I could. I was constantly making short films. I even made training videos for the cinema that I worked at. I just wanted to be making something and building my skills. Finally, I got some opportunities doing commercial work, so
Hmm.
making advertisements, and that really allowed me to build a portfolio. Then I was able to get some work with the BBC, and this was doing online content. So, very of the times, even though this was about 6 or 7 years ago, I managed to get some work doing little documentaries and talking about things that I like for their online platform, The Social. And
Hmm.
from there, I started to get runner work, I started to get researcher work, started to get into the edit because it was always my favorite part.
Yeah.
And then worked with lots of different independent production companies, worked across different things for the BBC. And then that led to people coming to me and asking if I can edit their film. And that's how I ended up nominated for a BAFTA. So that's the journey in a nutshell.
Yeah. And and you mentioned there about working with the BBC. Do you think that because of the BBC being this archetype of it's well, I think the term that some people use is anti, and it's this sort of like big thing that no matter where you are in the world, you've heard of a version of the BBC, like BBC America or BBC Nordic. But what do you think that that sort of made it more when you went to work with the BBC? Do you think that sort of made it more terrifying, like to try and make sure you do the best you can because it's this massive brand that you've heard of your entire life?
Oh, yeah. Regardless of how you feel about the BBC, it's a big opportunity for your career as a creative. And I saw this as my big shot. I
Yeah,
thought, I want to make things that are really high quality. I want to showcase the skills I've got
yeah,
and not tread too lightly. So I went into it, and even though it was a very low budget project, it
yeah,
was online content aimed at young people, and they wanted it to feel really youthful and
yeah,
quite raw. I still wanted it to have a level of quality so that I could point to it on my CV and say to
mm,
people, here's what I made for them. Here's like, not only do they have a good reputation, but you'll go there and you'll see quality. And immediately it attracted people like flies. Everybody, that was the thing that they would ask the most about at that point in time. Oh, let's see your BBC work.
yeah.
So yeah, it was huge. It was a really big company to have on my CV.
Yeah, because I think that when you hear about the BBC, you can think, oh, you can do anything, and you have this sort of feeling that, oh, even though it's this important thing, you might, oh, it's really good for its news and for its really intense and serious dramas, but and it also has its stupidness that you wouldn't get anywhere else. Do you think that that sort of helped you to feel more relaxed because you knew that there was a place for this type of thing on the BBC? You knew that whatever you were going to make, someone somewhere who will enjoy the BBC because it's across a variety of different age groups will enjoy this material.
Yeah, absolutely. Almost everybody in Britain has engaged with the BBC in some way. I would be
Yeah.
surprised if there's anyone out there who hasn't, because, like you say, it's so multifaceted. And across the world, people engage with the news. They know the programs and shows. They're aware of its massive presence.
Yeah.
And for me, getting that opportunity to do something that was very low key. I mean,
Mm.
I shot my videos in my living room. It really
Yeah.
wasn't the kind of glamorous side of film and TV that you expect. But I knew that, yeah, this was going to be a really big opportunity
Yeah.
in terms of what it actually is one thing. What it
Mm.
represents is way bigger than that.
Yeah. And do you think that because of so when you see like the biggest dramas on like British TV at the moment, they're also bizarrely really popular and it might not look at it from the outside, but once you get into the internet, you know that there's like millions of Americans that probably have accidentally adopted British accents. But when you see shows like Shetland being really popular in not just in the UK but in places like America because of streaming services like BritBox, does that sort of help you to realise that Scotland's on the map, not just for people outside of Scotland, but people around the world?
Yeah, this is something that I've been talking a lot about lately because I feel like Scotland's really on the cusp of something much
Yeah,
bigger. I feel like for the last few years, and it's been a tumultuous time. I think it's becoming clearer because I'm beginning to see the clues. And you
mm,
can look to other territories and see how they've done this type of switch
yeah,
around, going from a place where we have really struggled in recent years
yeah,
to now there is this very big opportunity on the horizon to thrive.
yeah,
So when I see things like Shetland doing really well, we have this new sort of representation out in the
yeah,
world. Like maybe it's not the strongest Scots representation, but Baby Reindeer
yeah,
really put Scottish people out there in a way that was interesting and
yeah,
quirky and different. It had nothing really to do with Scottishness. It was just a really strong story and a
yeah,
passionate individual at the core of that who was driving the whole thing.
yeah,
There's so many examples of that as well. Obviously, in recent years, we had After Sun
mm,
take, it was nominated for an Oscar and it did like, amazingly across
yeah,
the festival circuit. And again, it's just a story told by a Scottish person. It doesn't really have to be all singing, all dancing
yeah,
about our culture. And now we are seeing ourselves in these spaces more and more. So I went to Cannes Film Festival this year and I saw loads of Scottish projects. In competition, we had Lynn Ramsay, and
mm,
albeit she's making a film with Jennifer Lawrence and Robert Pattinson,
yeah,
it's more of a US film than a Scottish one, but it's a Scottish individual at the centre
yeah,
of it, driving that entire thing. And these are all signs for me that Scotland and its creativity is really having a
yeah,
moment. And then, here, fair enough, a lot of those projects have taken place in other spaces, or those are Scots that have maybe gone somewhere else to take
yeah,
their creativity there. Here, we are seeing such a boom in international production.
mm,
We had Spider-Man last summer.
yeah,
We've had the Batman, Indiana Jones projects. We've had the new 28 Years Later projects up here as well.
yeah,
We've had so many different things. And I feel like that's a big step in terms of people are accessing the locations,
yeah,
the opportunities and perks that you get for filming in the UK and in Scotland. And then we're beginning to see a lot more Scottish talent emerge into that space, whether
yeah,
that's behind the screen or whether it's on camera. There's this real build up. I'm speaking to more and more people who are
mm,
saying, like, yeah, I got an opportunity on that film that came to town, or oh, I've got this really big job for a few months
yeah,
doing this role behind the scenes. And that again, it's all of the signs are really clear at the moment that things are progressing
yeah,
and building. And the indie scene here is incredible. They are doing some really fun films. I'm a big admirer of a lot of the work that's coming out of Scottish
yeah,
creatives. And we've got a fantastic system. I know that there's a lot of criticism towards Creative Scotland and Screen Scotland. What I've learned is that sometimes the particular system in
mm,
place for a certain fund may not apply
mm,
to you, but that is not the end.
yeah,
They are not drawing a line and saying you'll never get in. You find roundabout ways, and the more you create, the more you're
yeah,
showcasing that you're ready for this. And it is like I say, I spent 7 years in a cinema before I got my
yeah.
first opportunities. Patience is part of being in this industry for sure. But yeah, I'm excited about what's happening here.
Yeah, and you mentioned there about Scottish talent, and you see that the bringing the international world to Scotland. So, for example, the best example you can ever give is that you have Alan Cumming hosting the US version of The Traitors. Now, for years, people loved the fact that people assumed the fact is wildly wrong, but they assumed that the Taggart's the one that said murder. But having Alan Cumming saying all the words that you get Claudia Winkleman saying, but in the Scottish accent, just makes it even perfect because he's got the correct accent, the correct tone, and even though he was supposed to host the UK version when his schedules didn't align, he still is one of those people that he suits that castle. If I didn't know he was an actor, I would have assumed he lived in that castle, assumed it was his little domain.
I know he embodies the role so perfectly. I've seen a lot of people posting recently about how fabulous his outfits are, and he's just really like fallen into this character who roams the castle in
Yeah,
these like massive capes and everything like that. And you can tell he loves it.
mm,
You can tell he feels at home,
yeah,
and it's so encouraging to see. And it is lovely because obviously they are filming the US version here in Scotland. And I think they film a few other international versions
yeah,
here also. So it's really nice to have that anchor for them. I think most people in Britain know that it's filmed in a Scottish castle,
yeah,
but people outside of Britain maybe just think it's a castle in the
yeah,
UK
yeah,
somewhere. So it's kind of nice to have that Scottish anchor on screen, just
yeah,
reminding them. And Claudia does her best. She
yeah,
does. She does explain. I'm sure they've brought in some Scottish names, and she does say loch
yeah.
instead of lake. So she tries her best. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's lovely to see that.
Yeah, and you've got Claudia Winkleman doing it herself, but then Alan Cumming just comes in with Fergus and the fact that he's got a dog. It's the dog's the most well-behaved dog ever. It's all this madness is going on. It could be running everywhere, running right, but no, it's asleep next to him.
Yeah.
It's a very polite Scottish dog, and and one of the things that I would say was a breakout hit, but I don't know the numbers to back that statement, so I'll just say that in my own personal opinion. But why do you think that it's so important to represent Gaelic drama on a high budget like the brilliant, the fabulous The Island?
Indeed, and Chilin. I think that's how you say it. This is. I mean, so you mentioned accent with Alan Cumming, and this goes into languages. This is something that I'm really personally very invested in at the moment. So we're at a very pivotal moment also in terms of culture, and I think this feeds into our media landscape because culture and media really feed off of each other.
Mm.
They rely upon each other to set the trends and to get people talking and invested in a certain style or I don't know what the word is, but like a sort of national sense and feeling. Zeitgeist. There you
Yeah.
go. The Germans have got it. So yeah, Gaelic and Scots last year were reinstated as languages in Scotland. They had been stripped away. And something I've learned recently is that hundreds and hundreds of years ago, of course, there was conflict. Of course, there was this whole kind of dynamic of who wins the British Isles. But actually, it's really been a more recent thing. And there's so many different influences from a post-war sense of community and trying to be able to rebuild together and
Mm.
not feeling like we were all separated out into different regions all the way up to a bit of globalization.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, I watched a lot of American television. I also watched a lot of Japanese television. There was this international influence. And so there is a part of your mind that's like, oh, okay, well, if I just speak a proper English, everybody will know what I mean. And I'm sure you get this too. And it comes down to even the way you say things and your accent. You sometimes code switch. So
Yeah.
you'll have like a really clean, proper English, and then you'll have your more colloquial, at home community sound and language as well. The difficult thing for me was that I found it really hard to come back to Scots because when I was at school, we were
Mm.
really discouraged from using it. And
Yeah.
this is a different side where it's not so much about community effort, it's more about people feeling that one thing's
Yeah.
correct and the other is wrong, and then vilifying Scots to the point that, everybody assumed that it was for Neds, it was for
Mm.
uneducated people. You sounded like
Yeah.
an idiot if that's how you spoke. And Gaelic went through the same process on a much more intense degree.
Mm.
There was, historically a divide between England and Scotland at times, but there was also a divide between the Lowlands and the Highlands of Scotland. And if you were speaking Gaelic in the Outer Hebrides, you were considered completely unsalvageable. You were so far away from civilized society that there was no real hope there. And that bias has just stayed with people for a very long time and passed down through generations. But I feel like finally we've arrived at a world where there is a lot more acceptance. There's a lot more curiosity and enthusiasm for the different and for culture and heritage that we may be letting go of. And that's where my journey started. I made a short film with my grandparents about traditional Scottish things that I felt were going to pass with the silent generation, and I wanted to re-embrace them. And that opened up this conversation about language.
Yeah.
So I went to a talk this year at the Edinburgh TV Festival that was about, it was called Language as Power. And so they invited some of the team from Anchalain, the island, and they also had speakers. They had people who were working in Scots television, the people who were working in Welsh television, in Irish Gaelic, because it's slightly different to Scots, Irish Gaelic, Scots Gaelic. And there's so many dialects in the UK. You know, you have Cornish right far down south. You've got Doric up in Aberdeen. You've got all these little pockets around the UK where there are words and things, you know, like I wouldn't confidently understand fully a Liverpudlian or, you know, or not to single them out, but just like all these little spaces where people have got like such rich culture and accent and language. And I really love exploring and embracing it rather than feeling that we all need to bridge the gap in the middle. I think it's wonderful that we can. I think it's great that practically anybody in the UK can communicate, but let's not lose that magic that we have along the way. And so, yeah, I'm working on a project. It's a feature film all about the Scots language and my relationship with it. And seeing things like the island and seeing more work come out in native languages is extremely encouraging. It also proves that people are happy to watch it. People are definitely okay with subtitles at the bottom of the screen.
Yeah, and I do think that for me, it is in a personal thing that I'm really fascinated by the Scottish language, the Welsh, the Irish, and down there in Cornwall because it's all I watched a really fascinating video about it and I've seen that multiple times. But it's one of those things that once you get into it and then you see that and you watch the TV shows, you're like, this is another world. And I think that if we jump forward to this year, the one that I've noticed coming out the Gaelic scene is that the Hebridean Baker, he's not just on BBC Otherwhere and leaving it there and promoting it there. He's also on BBC Scotland being talked to by Michelle McManus or on This Morning, and it gives a lot more saying that yes, you can have all this high-end drama and you can watch it on BBC Four, but if you come over to BBC Otherwhere, you can watch a very similar show to what you might be watching on BBC Two, but you get it from another aspect, from an interesting point of view. Do you think that sort of helps the factual side of it because of it, because he's representing not just himself, but representing that the Gaelic language is for everyone, not just
Yeah,
that end.
absolutely. So I met with him,
Mm,
although it was a Zoom meeting, much like yourself, it was
yeah,
online. But basically, when I was working as a researcher for the BBC, I interviewed him.
mm,
And it was because he had sort of picked up a really huge American audience through ASMR.
yeah,
They loved listening to the rhythm of his voice and the way that he said words. And he was posting videos on TikTok that were teaching people
yeah,
Gaelic language. So I was fascinated by that side of it, and then learned that not only is he teaching people Gaelic, but like you say, he's this big advocate. He's out there doing his thing baking. He's
yeah,
also living a life out in Lewis, and he has a very multifaceted individual. And you're right. Sometimes people are going to engage with language and culture through high-end drama, and they're going to see that play out, but that might not be everyone's cup of tea.
mm,
So then you have, you know, your day-to-day shows, your magazine shows where someone can come on, dial you might settle online to have that world and feeling very connected to the different parts of our culture and our heritage and feeling like everybody can engage with it. It's not just, you know, I think particularly because people perceive other languages as something that is quite complex to wrap your head around. Like
Yeah.
if you don't understand what they're saying, then it can make you feel like a bit of an idiot. And like I went through this as well. I always kind of sat there like, oh God, I don't know what's happening. And you know, there's a little element of shame there because you've never tried, or maybe you don't feel like you can really grasp it. But that's where we've got this wonderful dynamic of being able to communicate, bridge the gap, and then but then also allow people in
Yeah.
word at a time, take it very slowly, and just see what you're comfortable with. Is that this morning, you know, like just having a cup of tea, watching something light, or is it something more intense and dark and quite serious? But yeah, I think it's great to have representation all round.
Yeah. And one of the things you work on and work with in a broader sense is what's it like working with Sonora?
So Sonora is my production studio.
Mm.
It started out, I back in 2024 was a little frustrated that some of the opportunities in Scotland had closed down. And I'm not the type of person who waits to see what's going to happen next. So I decided to start a YouTube channel that was all about working in the screen industry. And the point was to facilitate conversation about the challenges we were having and then also think about solutions for the future and talk about, particularly for people who felt that they maybe had to leave the industry because there was not enough work, how to keep yourself creative,
Yeah.
how to find your way back, or if you were taking a break, what kind of work matches the skills you
Yeah.
have, and just really offer some advice because I found myself stepping away from broadcast TV, which I'd been working in for a good few years,
Mm.
and doing more online content. And that's still media. I really appreciate that it's the same realm. But for some people, that can be kind of scary. They maybe, you know, I use Instagram, I use TikTok, I use YouTube. I know what that looks like, but perhaps some people have never done that before. And so they're not familiar with that as another world and how does it differ from broadcast. So when I set up Sonora, the aim was to be as helpful as possible to the industry and really stimulate things and give people a resource that they could come to learn. Then slowly, I started doing some commercial work through Sonora.
Mm.
So going along to festivals and capturing interviews and talking about what was happening in the scene. I started interviewing creatives. So this would originally just happen anywhere. We would go to a pub or a kind of public place. Eventually, I settled on the Glasgow subway,
Yeah.
which was directly influenced from Subway Takes.
Yeah.
But hey, it's such a great format, and you know, great artists steal, so I'm okay with that. I always reference them as the originals,
Mm.
and it got me noticed in other ways. And I always wanted to, so I had started dabbling in short film production. I'd made a film with Screen Scotland in 2022, which is the one with my grandparents, What's For You. And I thought, okay, perhaps Sonora could go beyond being a channel and could actually produce some films.
Mm.
So I made a short film, which was called The Boulder. It was a retelling of the myth of Sisyphus pushing the boulder up the hill, but it's an artist
Yeah.
breaking into the creative industries. So you can definitely see where my mind was
Yeah.
at that point in time. And that did really well. Fantastic response. It was the first time a magazine published a review of one of my films.
Mm.
And I was like, it's 3 minutes long. This is insane. It takes longer to read the
Yeah.
article. And then it did really well in festivals. And I kept building the projects that I wanted to put out into the world. And at the moment, we have a feature documentary, Thrawn, in production.
Yeah.
This was crowdfunded. So, again, that was a whole side of the online space that I'd never really dove into. I had
Yeah.
very light experience with crowdfunding, and I wasn't quite sure how this would work out. But it turns out that having given my advice and my service to the industry and community for a year and a half meant that everybody was ready to have my back when it came to crowdfunding. And I've also put forward a project which is going through a lab at the moment,
Yeah.
which is Animatic. And it's a animated series, a very surreal series, which is about a 20-year-old boy who's disenfranchised by AI in the workforce
Mm.
and enlists as a skinner which is a person who shrinks down to a macro size and cleans the skin of rich people.
Yeah.
So those projects are really different in terms of format and their subject matter as well. But it's been really lovely to grow this because I still get to take part in, working with the community. I do a lot of training and I still make my videos and to help people out there. And then I also am doing this creative side of it as well and still building my own portfolio and getting my own work made.
Yeah. And do you think that having this online presence means that you can just do whatever you want, but you know that enough people see it so that it doesn't feel like you're stepping out of the industry. You can sort of like keep your foot in the door, and then when something happens that becomes even bigger than you can ever imagine, the big dogs that might want that type of thing to happen will be able to come to you and go, oh, this we really like this. Are you able to do something in that same realm?
Absolutely. I think there's so many elements to this that I didn't quite expect, and I think people maybe don't realize about the presence online. And I get it. Not everybody wants to be on camera, but if you can in some way make something and have it out there for people to find, it's going to open a lot of
Yeah.
doors. For me, having my YouTube channel.
Mm.
So I did have another channel before Sonora, which was just sort of everyday stuff. It was whatever I found interesting, I made a video on. And then I started Sonora, but that has always been the most clicked link on my CV. And I think part of it is that people want to sort of meet you
Yeah.
softly. They get to see you online. They get a vibe from your videos about who you are and what you
Mm.
feel and represent. And I always found that when I met people for the first time, they'd be like, I watched your video about this, that,
Yeah.
and the next thing, and it was really great. And I was like, oh, perfect. Like they already understand
Yeah.
a bit about me. And then, so recently, after crowdfunding, I made a video about the crowdfunder. I
Yeah.
was like, here are all the things we did that made this a success. And I really broke down all the elements and parts, the hiccups along the way. And Creative Scotland found it. Now,
Mm.
Creative Scotland were involved in terms of they matched some of the crowdfunding pledges.
Yeah.
So it came across their radar and they were like, oh my God, thank you for making this resource. We're
Mm.
going to share it with all of our colleagues. They posted about it online and that got more people
Yeah.
in. And then they are now asking me about looking into kind of digital avenues for them
Yeah.
in the future. They're basically doing a bit of research at the moment into where the digital economy is and
Yeah.
what creators are doing in Scotland. And so now I have a seat at the table to talk about that.
Mm.
And so yeah, like just from something really small as posting some videos from my living
Yeah.
room has grown into something much more influential and bigger. And it gets you work, it gets you opportunities, it gets you meeting people. So
Yeah.
it's been huge.
Yeah, and YouTube's at the very beginning, YouTube said broadcast yourself, and then there were all these people just sat there talking about some chippy that they went to, or filming themselves going to the chippy. It's like don't really want to see it. And then you have these like big people that are spending millions and millions on a car that they'll probably drive three times. And I think that what I like about YouTube and then other online platforms that are that are very similar to YouTube, where you can now make these short films, documentaries, web series, and fan versions of like Doctor Who or Taskmaster or whatever that you like. And do you think that that's a good step forward for the industry because it's not just these millionaires faffing about with cars or someone walking to the cinema to watch a film that they probably got to say it was the worst thing they've ever seen? Do you think it helps with the industry from a industry point of view and it helps the creative because then they've got more work to be able to share to be able to get further in their career?
Yeah, I definitely do. I think the phase where you documented every second of your life, and when I was young, people would post on Facebook what they were
Mm.
having for dinner, like that sort of stuff. We've definitely grown from there.
Mm.
And I think now there's this lovely blend of making something that you feel has a bit of value to the world, but
Mm.
also being completely authentic and candid within it.
Yeah.
So a lot of the best like online series, like things that we follow, like talking about subway takes.
Yeah.
The beauty of that is that it's all very real.
Yeah.
They do not discuss beforehand. They sit down on that train and they just they're allowed to talk about their
Yeah.
hot take. And then, the reactions are real, where the conversation flows is really fun and interesting. And it is edited, They're obviously
Yeah.
going to cut out all of the sort of awkward pauses or,
Yeah.
if anything interrupts them. But it's really down to earth. And I think that that's what people are really into watching at the moment, is this real authentic behavior and just letting something happen naturally.
Mm.
Even if it does feel awkward in moments, that's part of the charm.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be making something perfect, but if you make something that you really are interested
Yeah.
in and you feel good about, and I copied that model.
Yeah.
I was already interviewing people and doing the part where you ask interesting questions, you find out what their thoughts and
Mm.
feelings are. But I took it a step further by kind of like learning from it. One of the reasons that I thought I could, take a look at Subway Takes and draw from that as inspiration was that I was invited onto Charity Closet Picks,
Yeah.
which is a charity shop version of Criterion Closet. And it was so much fun. And again, it was very cheaply done.
Mm.
Two people with a camera. They invited me on. We went to an Oxfam. We went through all the DVDs and I picked out my favorites. And like, honestly, it's really lovely. It's really fun for them. It showcases their skills as filmmakers and their
Mm.
dedication. And I think the thing about online content is as well, nobody is forcing you to do it.
Yeah.
And that goes a long way because people identify the drive and passion within you to make something good.
Yeah. And as we mentioned early on, what was when you found out that you'd been nominated for a BAFTA? What was that feeling? Because the BAFTAs is, if you think of, if there's only ever one award, because people say awards are not the most important thing in the world, but if there's one award that anyone really wants, it's a BAFTA, because, mainly because I want to find out if the UK BAFTA and the Scottish BAFTA are slightly different. Because when you watch the Scottish BAFTAs, one eye hole is poked out and the other one isn't. So I've always wanted to get up close and personal to work out the eye situation. But what was the feeling like when you were nominated for the coveted BAFTA?
It was confusing, which is not the response that you would expect to hear. But they don't tell you
Yeah,
at the Scottish BAFTAs if you are in a short list, a long
yeah,
list, if you are in the running to be
yeah.
nominated until they announce it
Wow.
publicly. So me and the team, so I was the
Mm.
editor, the director, Gavin Reed, and the
Yeah.
cinematographer, Brendan Swift. The three of us were the core team
Mm.
who shaped the film over several months.
Yeah.
There were a few other people who came into the mix as well, but for the three of us, this was like a project that we followed through all of 2023.
Mm.
They were both at a film festival in the US, and I was just at home working on some edits. I wasn't like, we weren't anticipating the news.
Mm.
And then they got the news whilst they were landing in
Yeah.
London, having come home. And it was this big rush because they were like kind of going through loads of messages, wondering why they were getting congratulated, like really, really confused. And then so the director posted about it later than it had
Mm.
been announced to the world. But again, I didn't know because I didn't know to check the BAFTA
Yeah.
Scotland nominations that morning. There was
Yeah.
no indicator in the lead up. And so I was just sitting here at this desk and I saw that Gavin had posted and tagged me in, we've been nominated for a BAFTA. And I was like, what? I was so confused
Yeah.
because I just didn't know it was on the table. The film was eligible, but that doesn't in your mind
Yeah.
connect the dots that like, oh, today's the day we'll find out. I just thought that people who knew would have known long before then.
Mm.
So it was very confusing. But then there was all these mixed emotions of like elation and then like really not wanting to do the edit that I was doing in that
Yeah.
moment. I was like, I can't
Yeah.
be bothered doing this anymore. Let's go. And yeah, it was surreal,
Mm.
absolutely surreal. It also wasn't the type of project that I ever thought would be nominated for a BAFTA. Gavin was a master's student when he directed this film,
Wow.
and he and I, we knew each other for about a decade through film spaces, but we'd never worked together. And he just off the cuff was like, "Hey, would you edit my documentary?" And I was
Mm.
like, "Yeah, sure." So we edited it on evenings and weekends over that summer. whilst I was working on other stuff. And it just never felt like the project that
Yeah.
was going to be the big one. And there it was. So it was a magical experience, like the surprise of getting the nomination and then the sort of rush of, wow, we're actually going to the ceremony and this is real. Like we can now tell people that we're BAFTA nominated. Yeah, it was really, really
Yeah.
intense.
And from your personal opinion, why do you think that the Scottish BAFTAs is only broadcast as a highlight? Because when you look at the landscape of the BAFTAs, you've got the English BAFTAs that are randomly just called the BAFTAs that get broadcast in full. There might be a few bits that are chopped out for time constraints because they're filming it on a delay, and the Welsh BAFTAs that doesn't even make it to TV, from what I can gather. Why do you think that the Scottish BAFTAs are aired not like directly after, but a few weeks after, but in a really short highlight package?
To be honest, I'm not sure that there's the public excitement around the Scottish BAFTAs
Yeah.
yet. Maybe with time it'll grow, but I do understand that as an awards ceremony, if you're not there nominated, it might not be the most interesting
Yeah.
thing to sit through. So I don't mind. I actually, when we went, I didn't know that it was going to be televised,
Yeah.
because personally, I hadn't watched the Scottish BAFTAs
Yeah.
before, but I mean, if I'm not invited along next time, I'll be watching it on TV at
Yeah.
home now. It's one of those things. It's going to take a little bit of time for people to understand that it's there, even though I know it's been around for a long
Yeah.
time, at least a decade. But it does take time for these things to build up and for people to be interested enough to
Yeah.
watch them. A lot of award ceremonies do struggle with viewership.
Mm.
Even the Academy Awards year on year often report a kind of fall off, and they are looking at, I'm sure they're moving to YouTube
Yes.
in the
Yeah.
future.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which really does tell you about who's watching,
Yeah. Yeah.
the contrast in viewer behavior.
Yeah.
To maybe, I don't know. I don't know if in my lifetime watching the Academy Awards has been a big deal for anybody. I
Yeah.
always watch the highlights because it's on at crazy time in the
Yeah.
morning.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that perhaps if you're not at the ceremony, highlights is a better way to
Yeah.
see that. The only disappointing thing is that when they announced the short film category, in the moment, they played all of the clips. So they
Yeah.
played a clip from each film,
Yeah.
and ours got such a big laugh. Because although it's a very intense
Yeah.
documentary about being disappointed in the art world, it's funny.
Yeah.
It's very darkly funny. So it was so lovely because we
Mm.
didn't win the award, but we
Yeah.
felt amazing at the response to the film. And then they announced the
Yeah.
winner, blah, blah, blah. But in the televised version, it just goes straight from, and the short film category, the nominees are one, two, three, four, and
Yeah.
the winner is. And we were like, no,
Yeah.
our moment of glory. But that's okay.
Yeah. And I think that it's when you think of the Academy Awards, and what's interesting about those is that when you watch it on Sky and in its very different forms, that makes sense. You can watch it or you can watch the highlights. You're not going to see anything different. I think when they moved to ITV, because ITV decided we'll only have one advert break for no other, and cut to Jonathan Ross having some odd conversation that 50% of people don't really want to hear. I think that sort of makes people switch off at that point because it says, oh, it starts at this time. You think, oh, that's quite reasonable. But then it's actually Jonathan Ross and his gang for an hour before you get to the main attraction. And I think that that's why I think the viewers are not there because you know that at 1 in the morning they're going to still be there. You're not. You'll record it and go to bed. Do you think that's why for the Oscars it's not really viable to be on TV because they know that their award ceremony is one of a few American ones that get broadcast internationally.
Yeah. It's interesting because the Academy Awards in the US have always been considered the most prestigious award in cinema, although arguably film festivals like Cannes and Berlin and Venice are also the most prestigious award in
Yeah,
cinema.
yeah,
And then, of course, here, BAFTA, that's the highest honor that you can achieve as well. I feel like there's this real competing ideology around what warrants something having been good.
yeah,
What is the signal that this is what you want to see? And what does it mean to people? You know, an average person, are they bothered if something has an Academy Award, or do they just want to go and see something that will
Yeah.
entertain them? Like, what are their choices informed by? Is it we're a family, we watch family films, we're not super interested in. So it's like the choices that people make in order to watch film and TV, they're informed by so many different things. And sometimes I'm not sure who the award nomination or the award win is really for.
Yeah.
And I think that within the industry, absolutely, there's still a lot of respect for these
Yeah.
things. And even being a member, so I know people who vote in the Academy Awards, and
Yeah.
I'm a member of BAFTA Connect, so I don't get to vote, but I get to be part of the circle, get to
Yeah.
go along to the events and stuff like
Yeah.
that. There's so much respect within those circles in terms of
Mm.
like what films are included this year,
Yeah.
what filmmakers are up and coming, like whose work is getting recognized, and it means a lot to people there. And so in that, respect, the audience
Yeah.
probably for this are the people that care the most,
Yeah.
that recognize the value of the award. So maybe it should be steered towards them. Maybe it
Yeah.
should become something that's accessible for those types of people. Is, like, I think that, yeah, it definitely informs,
Yeah.
for me anyway, how it should be shaped. Do I care about an hour long show at the start that is not the actual
Yeah.
ceremony? Not really.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think you're right. I think maybe it's aiming at a wider audience that actually aren't that bothered what
Yeah.
wins the BAFTA and what doesn't.
Yeah, and I think that for the Oscars particularly, I think if you think of some of your favorite films, some of them, if you're a certain type of person, might not even made it to the Oscars because it's not in a category like comedy and your superhero film. Like I read somewhere one someone said that if Marvel were allowed in the Oscars, then Endgame would have won loads of awards and it would have been praised. But why do you think that why do you think that the Oscars itself gatekeep some categories?
Well, the shape of filmmaking has changed drastically in the last 20 or so years because so the films that have won the most Oscars ever
Yeah.
are Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, massive crowd pleaser, made lots of money, obviously
Yeah.
hugely influential, and his IP continues to live on in TV series.
Yeah.
Then you've got Titanic and Ben-Hur.
Mm.
And I can't really speak for Ben-Hur, but obviously Titanic was massive in terms of
Yeah.
cultural impact. But these films are films that, have a big sprawling cast, have got this like massive like storyline that
Mm.
encompasses lots of different things, and they're comparable to Avengers Endgame
Yeah.
in a way that there is so much going on and there's lots of different characters that you care about. The story is complex but also told in a very effective and simple way. Lord of the Rings, Return of the King did use CGI, but very sparingly. And
Yeah.
I feel that when CGI became a very prominent part of
Mm.
filmmaking, this is where the Academy felt, wait a second, how can we award people for skills that are
Yeah.
completely different to everything that's been before?
Mm.
And they've always lent more towards this raw style of
Yeah.
filmmaking, minimal CGI, minimal use of digital effects.
Yeah.
And I feel that the mainstream cinema has steered further into that direction.
Mm.
And this sort of sophisticated,
Mm.
award-winning filmmaking
Yeah.
very much prioritizes what you can do with less.
Yeah.
And I think that it's interesting that both worlds are really enjoyable.
Yeah.
I mean, I love a big blockbuster
Yeah.
as much as I love a indie or A24 style
Yeah.
movie. But the worlds of those types of
Yeah.
filmmaking have moved really, really far apart. And that's where I feel that Marvel were never going to crack the
Yeah.
Academy because it relies entirely. In fact, I mean, I've dove into this a few times, and apparently they don't even let the cast see the whole script,
Wow.
so that they don't know like what happens and they can't give it away. So you would show up and you'd be acting a scene, but you
Yeah.
didn't know who you were opposite,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you're just in a green space, and they're going to fill it all in later. And that for some people is not filmmaking.
Yeah.
That for a Scorsese, that's a roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
That's just silly entertainment.
Yeah.
And over here, where we don't use that much, and the thing is, artistic films still use CGI. They do.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
always some element of digital generation. But this is considered art.
yeah,
This is considered sacred. And that's where the Academy have aligned. So they do leave out all that stuff. It's fascinating though, if you look at, you know, the pretty much since the year 2000, the changing landscape and how bizarre things were because Shrek, the first
yeah,
movie, I'm
yeah.
sure it was in competition at the Cannes Film Festival,
Wow.
and you would never find that now.
Yeah,
Like that would be like unspeakable these days.
yeah.
But at one point in our history, that was completely on
Oh,
board. It was
wow.
fun and it was fine.
Yeah, yeah, and in college, I did BTEC media, and the people were obsessed with Shrek. It was at one point the teacher had to give in and do a Shrek quiz,
No way.
because then everyone would shut up about Shrek. But it wasn't even like the whole class was talking about it. There was just enough people, and then everyone else just got involved and went, "Ooh, let's win!" It was a Kahoot. It was like a really competitive. Who knows more about Shrek? Um, 'Cause it's becoming a little bit like, yes, there's other films. We're not talking about Shrek anymore. Shut up about it. And they actually reference Shrek all the time. There was a few Shrek experts
Oh,
in the audience.
the cultural impact of Shrek. I
Yeah,
mean, that's a whole podcast in itself.
yeah,
Scottish.
yeah. And so in your career, you do a lot of directing. As a when you're watching, so it's what as a in creative circles, whenever I'm watching something, I'm never just watching. I'm always going, that's a good shot. I will steal that. Thank you very much. I'll attempt to do it. Might fail, but I'll steal it. But as a director, when you're watching TV and film, do you sit there and watch it and just forget that you're in that world, or are you watching going, ah, I see how they've done that, and I quite like that bit. I might borrow that.
Yes, I think a little bit of both. I think it depends on what I'm watching
Mm,
and if it is something that I feel that I would do in my work.
mm,
So there's lots of times where I can completely switch off and just let myself be immersed, which is really lovely.
mm,
Um, but then, yeah, there's times where I'm like, you know, eyes wide, analyzing what I can see, what I can
yeah,
hear, how they've constructed this, how have they made this happen. But it tends to be, yeah, with the
mm,
ones that I am really influenced by. I remember when I was at college, my lecturer said that once he taught us, you know, screen analysis,
yeah,
that it would ruin watching TV
yeah,
and film
yeah,
forever. And I never felt that it did. I always felt that it slightly enhanced it
yeah,
because I was still able to be absorbed by the story, but I had this kind of extra motor running at the back of my
mm,
head that was kind of like, that's a great shot.
yeah, yeah,
Or like, how did they make that happen?
yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, there's always those two things going on at the same time. And I draw a lot of inspiration. And I wear my inspirations on my sleeve. I'm very transparent. But I really love that. And I think most creatives are. They
mm,
sort of like see everything out there as an influence and go, oh my
yeah,
gosh, how do I reinterpret this,
yeah,
bring it into what I'm doing, pay homage to it? And I like to do that with my work.
yeah. Yeah, and I think that the other thing I quite like about it when you're in this world is when you say, "Oh, I'm going home to watch such a thing," and because you're in that world, it's not for pleasure, it's for work. You can pretend it's for work. You can say, "Oh, I'm going to watch 3 hours of such a thing." Not because not definitely not because I want to, definitely because I'm doing some work, definitely I'm analysing. I'm
Oh
definitely not
yeah.
watching it for fun.
Oh, I've considered switching my Netflix subscription to my business account because
Yeah,
I was like,
yeah,
come on, really?
yeah, yeah,
This is research technically. I've
yeah,
not gone that far yet. I'm not sure how an accountant would respond to that if I was
yeah,
to put it in front of
yeah.
them.
Yeah, and I think that when it comes to streaming, you've got those like really interesting streaming services that from an outlooker, you might think that does not look great. Like I'm gonna mispronounce it because I can't work out what letters are in the name, but Mubi.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
maybe.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that what's interesting about that is that it's not for everyone. It's for a particular person that says, right, I want to get into this industry, but I want to do something unique. That is the hub of uniqueness. And do you think that that sort of helps in a way because it says that, yes, you get inspiration from watching Stranger Things or a program about a grandma doing things, or you can watch this art house film that will transform you the way you look at film.
Yeah. I think people who are really diehard about art house cinema, they're going to be drawn to a movie player. Like,
Yeah.
it's for them.
Yeah.
And I do think that's quite helpful because it can be in the indie film scene quite difficult to find what you'd like to watch.
Yeah.
You may hear of films that have been at festivals, or one of your friends says, "Oh yeah, I saw this in the cinema, but it only had a 1 week release,
Yeah.
and now it's gone." And it can take quite a while for it to come back around into your space, and it's difficult. Like, you know, I've been reading recently that a lot of people have kind of gone back to piracy.
Yeah.
And that's partially that what they really want to see, it's difficult for them to
Yeah.
find, but also that maybe you already have like 3 or 4 subscriptions and you want to watch this one thing. Lo and behold, it's on a
Yeah.
different subscription service,
Yeah.
not the 5 that you
Yeah.
already have. And you're just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So it is frustrating. But yeah, I think having those niche services are really useful,
Yeah.
especially because it's not necessarily saying, well, some of them are like, we do this genre,
Yeah.
like there's one that Amazon owns. Oh, what's it called? It's a horror one. Begins with an S.
Oh, a Shudder.
Shutter. Yeah, that's it,
Yeah.
Shudder. So they're like, we just do horror. And that's
Yeah.
amazing because if you're a horror fan, you know that you're going to find
Yeah.
exactly what you're looking for. And also, that's a really experimental place where people also are interested in the story more than they
Yeah.
are the actors or the
Yeah.
director and things like that. So I think it's kind of good to have these pockets where you can go. I think the danger is that, like I said, the
Yeah.
oversaturation and then pushing people to pirate because they're like, I'm not signing up for another
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm already paying like all this money for these other subscriptions.
Yeah.
Like, do I really need this as well?
Yeah.
So yeah, but I've signed up for maybe a few times and then just paused my subscription if
Yeah.
I know that like I'm not watching a lot of movies lately, or I've
Yeah.
maybe just been to a film festival and I'm not going to be sitting at home
Yeah.
watching films for a wee while. And I think that's quite a good system. Like it gives you
Yeah.
flexibility to dictate when you're ready to spend the money and,
Yeah.
and put in the time, and when maybe you're like, oh well, not this month. I've got so
Yeah.
much on. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that going back to an earlier point we were discussing about, there's one that I really like. It's called Via Play. And a lot of it's known for its kicking about football sport, but it's a lot of Swedish and Danish and all this drama. And I think it's not just drama, but comedy and documentaries. And I think that that showcases again this niche world of, yes, if you like The Bridge and you like The Killing, you like that end. Well, The Bridge is on this service, but you can also watch something that you wouldn't expect
Yeah.
to enjoy, and you will want to watch it again and again. And I think it just showcases that the field's really wide. Do you think that when you get those type of things, do you think that is a positive because it then showcases other people in a sense of, if you like that program, then you really will like this one, and we've got that on here to so that you know it's in a similar quality.
Absolutely. I think discovering new work through what you've already enjoyed
Yeah,
is a really, really lovely pipeline to discover more
yeah,
artists and get into things that maybe you've not heard through word of mouth, maybe
yeah,
nobody else you know has watched. But it's better for you to go on
yeah,
that journey and discover and watch, think outside the box in terms of
yeah,
what you would typically watch. I like that a lot. Movie does do that too, but I
yeah,
have a wee criticism of them because sometimes you search a film and it'll come up with the whole
yeah,
page. It'll be like, here's the poster, here's the cast, here's the crew, here's all about it. But they don't actually have the film.
yeah, yeah,
You cannot click play. And I'm like, why
yeah,
is this here?
yeah,
So, yeah, as long as you can continue on that journey and see
yeah.
what you want to see, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah. And before we move on, one of the things that I quite like talking about, because you don't hear enough about it, is that if you're in a college or a university, you can watch Boxer Broadcast. It's incredible. It doesn't have an app, which is rather annoying.
Ah,
And it takes forever to try and save you login so that you can don't have to remind where you're up to. But it's a really good thing for education because you can look at the manuscript, you can get clips that are useful, and they use it a lot in lectures and whatnot at uni. And I think that it's really helpful because then if you go, oh, there's that really good program, but it's not available anywhere else, or it's outside your price range, if you know if it's in a certain realm of when it was broadcast, you can find the broadcast date and watch it as it was broadcast. You can see, oh, you know that it's so I was watching an episode of Channel Five's version of the UK version of Impractical Jokers, which is the second version, and I saw an advert with an actor in it that I quite enjoyed. And I thought, oh, I never knew that that advert existed. And you learn new things because you're like, oh, because you never saw that program when it came out. Do you think that having that sort of platform in an educational standpoint is another way of helping the next level creatives to go, well, I heard about this really good thing. I'll try and find it on this website.
Oh, absolutely. They did not have that when I was at college and uni.
Yeah,
We would have to go to the uni library and see if they had the film or TV show that
yeah,
we were talking about. And if someone else had booked it out, then you just had to wait for
yeah,
them to return it or
yeah,
maybe watch it together. That's huge because part of the challenge of studying media is that you have to get your hands on
yeah,
that media. And there was lots of times where we were required to write essays about certain parts of cinema
yeah,
history, and they would tell you you can't use this film or this film because
yeah,
there's too much about that already.
yeah,
So try and find something else that fits in with this movement. And it was
yeah,
so hard finding the right material and where
yeah.
to watch it. So that's amazing. What is it called?
Box of Broadcasts,
There we
or,
go.
or as some people call it, Bob, because it shortens to BOB. And
I'm going to write it down.
and what I've managed to be able to do that you wouldn't think. The drama channel on TV has certain years of casualty, right? And it stops at a point where they think, ah, we can't call it classic casualty anymore. So they have to park it at a point.
Okay.
And because it wasn't available on the iPlayer anymore, because I was watching it from the 2012 version to Series 34. I was able, with Boxer Broadcast, able to catch up to the iPlayer stuff
Ah,
because it had every series, and because the BBC have the bit where you know when it's broadcast, you know what time it was at, you know when it was, and you know what channel it was on. You can then search it up in the criteria. So type in casualty by title, what date the series started, what date the series ended, what times, what year, what channel it was on. So you can get a created list of that's the episode you're after. You can watch that one and you can save it to a playlist or create a clip. Or if you're really clever, read along whilst watching so that you can get a
wow.
better understanding of it and you can catch up so that you're not watching the iPlayer casually going, who on earth is that character? I thought they were going out with such a body. And I think that it's helpful and it gives you a new scope of going, ah, I understand that more because I can see, well, they said that word and that word. And you can find certain directors that you sort of, oh yeah, you know that they've done that work. And because you've just done it by words that it's associated with, if the credits are on screen, it will have written down the words directed by, and it'll be able to
Yeah.
find everything that director's done because you've set it to any word that's casualty. If 24 Hours in A&E has said the word casualty, that'll be in the list. And I think it's helpful for universities, but more
Oh,
colleges
yeah.
need to get on with it, and you have to speak to whoever to buy a subscription, but more people need to be involved in it.
That's amazing. And it's helpful not just for students who are
Yeah,
obviously always referencing media, but the video essay online community is
yeah,
pretty huge. Even as as a YouTuber, I quite often go back into the
yeah,
history of things. So when they announced that River City was being cancelled in
yeah,
Scotland, I did a little deep dive into soap
yeah,
operas and the influence that they'd had over the last century. And so these resources are really important, and it's getting better and better and
yeah,
better each day. Even things like Shot Deck.
yeah,
So on there, you can look up a piece of media, it will break down all the shots.
yeah,
And then when you click on one, you can see the camera they used, the
yeah,
lens they used, the lighting, the director, the cinematographer. It's amazing. And it's just so useful to have those resources because
yeah,
otherwise you're doing all that legwork manually.
yeah, yeah. And so, as we come towards the end of this excellent, glorious interview, you mentioned there about River City, and I think that River City is incredible. It's in the top 10 list of incredible soaps that shouldn't have ended. Doctors is at number one on that list, and River City is at number two because it's not over just yet. And we've still got time to mourn its death, and then criticize why it ended, but why do you think that River City is going to be a big loss, not just to the industry, but to the Scottish sector of that end of drama?
It's a big loss because River City is a training ground.
Yeah.
And that's what it's seen as for a lot of people in the industry. It's a great opportunity for people to go in, get their first experiences working on a set,
Mm.
being part of a bigger show. A lot of people cut their teeth and move on to drama or move on to other areas of the
Yeah.
industry. It's a great place for being able to get that first
Mm.
opportunity. It's a really open place. And I know a lot of people who work on the show who are disappointed on a level that, yes, they'll have to find more jobs,
Yeah.
but that they're so proud of what they do with that show and how that helps shape
Yeah.
the Scottish industry. It is a massive loss. The amount of training and opportunity that affords people that's first step into the industry. And for a lot of people, it's a long-term job.
Yeah.
And we don't have many of those in media. We don't really see a lot of job security because usually a TV show is commissioned, you work on
Yeah.
the part that you're doing, and then you have to find something
Yeah.
else. You know, it's not constantly rolling, and soaps are.
Yeah.
So it is a huge loss in terms of the amount of people that now have to find work, the opportunity to get into the industry, to
Yeah.
learn new things, to
Yeah.
cut your teeth and get those early
Yeah.
experiences. It's really, really tough that
Yeah.
it's disappearing.
Yeah. And so what we need to do, if any, if for people that are watching, we need to campaign to get River City and Doctors back on our screens because they're both very helpful things and they're both cracking drama. Um, and so as we come towards the end of this interview, without giving away your home address, where can people track you down online?
So you can find me on Instagram uh, at Sonora Films. Sorry, that was a terrible. I'll start that bit again. It was like I forgot my own company name. Um, so you can find me on Instagram, on YouTube, and TikTok
Mm,
at Sonora Films. You can find myself, Ash on Film,
yeah.
across different social media as well. I'm also on LinkedIn, so Ashley Catherine Dick. That's a good way to reach me because I check it daily. With my other profiles, things are crazy.
Mm.
So apologies if I don't get back to you super fast, but you can find me there and connect, and I'll do my best.
And so there we have it. Another wonderful interview and another wonderful time of the day. Whatever time you're watching this, it's wonderful. Words. That's why you don't script things, because then you can say stuff like that and then regret later and realise what on earth have I just been talking about. So thank you for letting me interview you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
And thank you guys for watching. And remember, no, I've forgotten.